Good morning, Matt Waldman. Seems like everyone's making a lot of money but us, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But you're making a little bit selling the rookie scouting portfolio. Hi, I'm Bob Harris. He's Matt Waldman. This week I decided to introduce us before we got 30 minutes into the broadcast. This is the Feel It or Fuck It podcast, in case you didn't know. There will be swearing. Be warned. There will also be talk of the rookie scouting portfolio. I know the customers are pleased, Matt. Do tell.
They are. And, I often go on other podcasts, Bob, or we're on this one, and I'll talk about the general path to becoming an RSP subscriber. Well, there's kind of two general paths. There's one that you hear about it, and you liked what you heard, and you decide that I'll give it a shot, and then you're blown away by it, and then you're like, I'm a lifetime customer, and then you're like, you don't charge enough. Then the other path is usually, you're an idiot. I don't understand how you could see something this way. And then those other things tend to follow. And then they tend to be even stronger customers from that end. But this is the typical email. I got an email that just kind of typifies the type of emails I get from first-time subscribers. And it's the title of it is Jesus Christ. So as Matt, I just purchased the RSP for the first time. Been a casual fantasy football drafter for a while at entering my 11th season. I spent 9 years drafting in 1 to 2 leagues and consumed ESPN coverage and a bit of Twitter. But as my cohort matured and the buy-ins increased, I accumulated a number of second-place finishes and wanted to turn those good seasons into rings. I'm lizard brain competitive and love all the juice that comes along with a vibrant fantasy football league. My league mates all follow the fantasy footballers, good site, and I leveled up by finding the CBS guys, also good site. Realizing how much I didn't know, and I didn't, and the next thing I knew, I ran into Matt Harmon, Dwayne McFarland, Chris Harris, and finally you. All good folks, present company accepted here. But I spent a lot of time listening to podcasts and have gone deep into your back catalog and felt compelled to engage with and respond to the work you do. Your episodes with Adam Harstead from 2024, where you discussed, among many other things, craft, content generation, and writing process, integrity, were particularly striking, especially when one considers the stream is ostensibly about fantasy football. The authenticity, vulnerability, and openness that you guys created and invited the listeners to engage with is unique in the ocean of podcasting. I identify with and appreciate your circuitous path to happiness and fulfillment. I'm 45, and only in recent years have I started to feel comfortable in my skin and proud of the decisions I've made in the face of judgment and disappointment from role models, parents, etc. Now the RSP. Jesus H. There was life before I did LSD, and everything that's come after forever altered. For fantasy football, there has been 10 seasons, and now there's the RSP. That is a paradigm shift for my fantasy football life that cannot be understated, and I'm grateful for the work you and your team do. You have indeed undersold and over-delivered, and once I've won my leagues this year, I'll happily proselytize and spread the word, but I need a ring or two first. Kind regards, Christopher Green. So
let me just say, Christopher Green, apparently you're blissfully unaware of the Feel It or Fuck It podcast. I'm not surprised you didn't bring that up specifically then, not knowing about me and my great work here as well, shepherding Matt Waldman through the information that's necessary to help you win your fantasy leagues. But that's neither here nor there. This is absolutely true. And I can attest to this, the LSD portion at least, absolutely correct.
Yeah, so we appreciate your email, Christopher. Not mentioning Feel It or Fuck It notwithstanding, but yeah, this is the kind of emails I get. So when I try to tell people I undersell and over-deliver, people usually think I'm overselling because of stuff like this, but this is generally the case. So you can go to mattwaldman.com and find out for yourself. And if you have any issues, either purchasing the product or questions, just email me at mattwaldmanrsp@gmail.com, and I usually get back within 24 hours. And it may be more closer to the 24-hour side this time of the year because I'm kind of taking it a little bit easy before the fantasy season really ramps out. A little bit, yeah. I'm working on projections. So for those of you who are who purchase the projections, and Dynasty rankings. I'm doing a couple of teams a day right now, so they'll be out by early June. I'll have football guys rankings out in early June with full commentary with every player, and I'll also be writing gut checks once again over at Football Guys during the summer as we enter the season. So you can catch me, and of course you can find all of Bob's fantastic work now over at Football Guys. They had a coup when they got this guy, but I knew that, because one of the big thrills of my fantasy football career early on was actually getting a chance to write for the magazines that Bob edited and put together. So,
fuck that.
Comes full circle that now I get to embarrass Bob Harris a little bit.
That's enough of that. That's enough of that nonsense.
Okay.
We should talk about the football. Also, you should go buy the rookie scouting portfolio. MattWaldman.com is where you should go and get that immediately if you have not already done so. So I encourage it. I am a purchaser, a lifelong purchaser, and everything that you heard from that missive was absolutely correct. Also, the San Francisco 49ers are now lifelong purchasers of Brock Purdy. Mr. Irrelevant is irrelevant no more. On Friday, they signed him to a 5-year, $265 million extension. Kind of puts any questions to rest about who their quarterback of the future is. Total guarantees. The deal includes $181 million in total guarantees. That's 165 of those in the first 3 years of the contract. The average money is right in line, about $53 million a year average, with what top players are making. I think right up there with Trevor Lawrence. So, let's just go first from the NFL perspective. I've seen a lot of people up in arms. That's too much money. What does he have to do to establish himself as a frontline NFL quarterback?
Probably win a couple of Super Bowls in a row and lead the league in passing yardage and touchdowns for a couple of years. That's probably what it will take. Because the thing with Brock Purdy, whether it's real football or fantasy football, is that when you're prognosticating who's a high-end talent, you're looking at things like arm strength, speed, size, physical traits that give you both the upside and then the football skills. He has the football skills, but when they start looking at other players that he would compare to, Bo Nix is faster. Sam Darnold has a stronger arm. Jaden Daniels has a stronger arm and he's faster. Jalen Hurts is bigger, faster, and has a stronger arm. Same with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Joe Burrow might be his equal in the pocket, but he has arguably better weapons, and has proven that he's a top 5 guy year in and year out. So I think that's why he's undersold along with the draft capital. They see the 49ers as the team that carries him as opposed to him carrying that team. But last year, the 49ers had a lot of injuries to their top receivers and their top running back, and they had they were a top 10 offense last year, and the one constant was Brock Purdy for the most part, who was, who posted 13th ranked fantasy production at the position, but he only played 15 games. So he missed 2 games, but his average per game still puts him, if you were to exclude the 2 people who had 1 game apiece, he'd be 10th overall in fantasy points per game last year among quarterbacks who started most of the season. So, when you consider that Aiyuk is coming back, that Pearsall has another year on him, that Christian McCaffrey is coming back. Purdy is more than good enough to consider him as a top 10 to top 12 player at this position and an easy starter.
Well, let me throw that out there because just to put some numbers on all that, he took over as a starter for Jimmy Garoppolo, the very handsome Jimmy Garoppolo, in Week 13 of 2022. The 49ers are 27-15, including playoffs in games he started. Over that span, he ranks third in the NFL in passing yards with 9,452. First in yards per attempt, 8.9 yards. Seventh in touchdown passes at 64. You mentioned the injuries last year. He still finished his fantasies quarterback 13. This year, he's like, I think, quarterback 14 on our projections. He's going right at that same range in best balls. Mid-tier quarterback too, so he's being underdrafted. Where's the right spot to draft Brock Purdy? What are you feeling?
I'm feeling probably anywhere after the top 7. I think somewhere between 6 and 12 is probably going to be at or below his value, because people looked at 2023 as a fluke when he was QB6. But QB6 was he played 16 games and he had a full complement of weapons who were healthy. Last year, he was QB 13 without the full complement of weapons and missing one additional game, which says to me, if you put it in context of how he scored, he's been consistently really inside the top 10. That should be enough for you to value him that way. But because people don't understand how to look at anticipation and pass placement and processing speed and really what constitutes great pocket play, those are subtler things to see on tape. I think that they lean more towards Jordan Love's arm, Lamar Jackson's speed, Dak Prescott's size, speed, and arm, all that type of stuff, and Brock Purdy starts to fall down the boards because they don't think he has the upside because the physical skills aren't always there. But to me, no, this is the point where he should be.
Feel it or fuck it. It's always been a foregone conclusion because basically Brock Purdy is the guy you see on the field, except with a tiny little Kyle Shanahan in his brain pulling the levers. Like, he executes the offense, right? Is that, yeah. I mean, like we know that because he moved in as a starter. We can go back to his rookie mini camp or the rookie training camp when Shanahan told somebody, I can't remember who it was, that this guy's probably, or he told the owner is who he told. Yeah. This guy's probably going to end up being our starter.
Yeah. So what that tells you is you can say, yes, Shanahan's in his head, but really that's also kind of like saying that Sean McVay had puppet strings on Jared Goff. And
yeah, I think that's the way people view it, but I think the better way to say it is here's a player who executes the instructions given to him in a way that the coach really likes.
Yes.
And that's kind of part and parcel of the job of NFL quarterback.
And that's hard to do. That's what people don't understand is that is hard to do. And so, yes, I think that's a great way of putting it is that he really understands the game and he understands the offense and he can execute it quicker than most and with quicker accuracy and confidence that's needed with quarterbacks that a lot don't have.
All right. Jauan Jennings being drafted as wide receiver 38. We'll talk about Brandon and Aiyuk here. He could be ready for week 1. We'll see if he is or isn't. Jauan Jennings, meanwhile, being drafted as wide receiver 38 in about the 6th round. Ricky Pearsall going as wide receiver 43 like a round later. Feel it or fuck it. You want those guys at that price?
Yeah, absolutely want those guys at that price because, you're likely if you're going to have a top 10 producing quarterback, that means he's going to feed multiple players. And you're getting these guys at a range where there's still value to be made in them. With Jennings, I think the bet is that he's going to be more valuable earlier, and then the bet on Pearsall is that he'll overtake Jennings a little as the season moves along. But either way, you're looking at guys here who probably will be the 3rd option if Brandon Aiyuk is healthy, or the 3rd or 4th. So again, you're looking at this as a 6th or 7th round play. I'll put it this way. These are the guys that around that time, if they fall to the 8th, 9th, and 10th round, that's where I'm probably taking them and considering a running back during this range or a tight end or Brock Purdy, a little bit later too, but or somebody who's going to be in the range of Brock Purdy as a quarterback 1, because those guys like Jennings, I don't see we're going to need Aiyuk and Kittle and McCaffrey to get hurt again for them to probably realize the consistent value of like a wide receiver 3 in fantasy. So if they fall maybe 2 to 3 more rounds below that, that's where I'd probably take them. But around this range is where I'm thinking about them.
So I think back to last year. And by the way, we'll throw in here. Aiyuk is going, I want to say is wide receiver 45 right now. So, I mean,
wow,
going in, he's the 81st pick overall. So you're getting quite the steal on him in round 7, late round 7, early round 8, somewhere in that range, just after Pearsall. I think most people aren't sure he's going to be ready for week 1. It seems like that's within the range of outcome. Is Dr. Neil Tachare? How do you say that guy's name? I don't know. Whatever. Prominent knee surgeon has told the 49ers that that's possible. We don't know if it will be or not. I will say, though, like, are people remembering last year where he just sucked? I mean, he was ass bad up to the time he got hurt. Remember, they had a summer-long holdout. Was never on the same page, couldn't get going, had drop passes. It was just a miserable start to the season. Meanwhile, Jennings, by the way, he had Jennings 113 targets, career high, 77 catches, career high, yards 975, career high, touchdown 6, career high. I think he's being overlooked. He had the 175-yard game in week 3 last year. Week 3. Had 5 games with more than 88. 175 yards on 11 catches. It's a big game. Had he not missed 2 games with a hip injury in the middle of the season, had he not been injected in week 18, probably would have hit the 1,000-yard mark. Like, I'm hoping Aiyuk climbs up, that people gain confidence in him. He climbs up ahead of Jennings, and I'm able to get Jennings cheaper. That's my hope. But talk a little bit about Aiyuk and what your expectations are for him, assuming he's at or near ready to go to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think that, okay, looking at it this way, if we're going to, I guess the most clear way to look at this is that with a player who's come back from an injury like this, it's probably going to take him all year to really get back to physical form. So I can see now when I think about it that Aiyuk is probably a guy that people are going to be cautious about. And then it might take a full year for him to really be that guy. So then Jennings in his place, as wide receiver 43 or 38, probably makes more sense at that stage, and that you're probably getting him at a value. And yeah, I think Jennings probably then is an underrated component there. I mean, after, when you look at what he did as wide receiver 24 last year, that's pretty good work, and they're going to be able to work him open in zones because George Kittle is a man beater type of player. Certainly you look at someone like, who else? What I wasn't going to put in there. Deebo Samuel certainly is going to occupy the attention of players last year. So, someone like Pearsall with his speed still is probably someone that you could look at and feel like that he's going to be able to stretch defenses enough to open zones for Jennings. So, yeah, I mean, from that standpoint, I can see why they're all kind of bunched in that group. And from a redraft perspective, yeah, I'm feeling all of that.
I would like the prices to be driven down on Jennings and Pearsall. I think Pearsall, I would like to be the cheapest of the 3 receivers by the time the season starts, and I'll have a lot of shares of him if he is, or I'll have more shares of him if he is. Right now, I'm getting a ton of Jennings. I'm kind of avoiding Aiyuk until I get a little clarity. The price is right if you want to take a chance. You can't beat that. A potential wide receiver 1 for his team and what should be a pretty good offense.
Yeah.
That's hard to resist. So I will have shares of him. I'd like a little more clarity on what that timetable is. But it was like in October. I want to say October 20th was the injury. So, having him back for, if not week 1, at least a large portion of the season, depending on how the how quick he ramps it up. Yeah, I'll try this. I'll just try this without butchering it. Dr. Neil L. Atrache. I don't know. I can't say the name, but he's a pretty prominent surgeon. And he usually is out there pretty public on these issues when he's, and making his case when he feels like he's done a good job. So good for him.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we look at say for instance weeks 1 through 17 last year, and I mean, Ladd McConkey was wide receiver 12 at the end of the year, but after the first 5 weeks, where was he? I mean, if you look at McConkey, let me see where I can find him here. He was certainly not in the top. He wasn't even in the top 20.
Right.
He wasn't even he was actually, let's see. I'm still scrolling down. He's wide receiver 55. So you had a top 12 receiver after 5 weeks at wide receiver 55. Brandon Aiyuk, if he had stayed healthy, we might have had a very different view of him by the year's end, because that's usually Jerry Jeudy was wide receiver 48, and we saw what went on towards the end of the year, towards the second half of the year. His game took off. Amon-Ra St. Brown was wide receiver 20 to start the year after the first 5 weeks, and he was a top 12 receiver. So we have to remember that the limited timeline where Aiyuk was ass, you're right, but he likely would have turned around that perception.
Let's talk about the other piece here. George Kittle, he's tight end 3, going overall, 43 overall, after, as you would expect, Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. He was 3rd in total fantasy points. He was 1st in fantasy points per game. The dude has been a monster. Is age catching up with him, or is he the true value of that top tier of tight ends? If you're counting it as the top 3, like Sam Laporte is going right after that. I think that's the correct way to do it. But I feel like Kittle might be the best value. Well, how about you? Feel it or fuck it?
I'm feeling that, just because tight ends age a little slower than other positions. Now, what I mean by that is they tend to have more value later on in their careers. We've seen that with elite tight ends at after 30, even after 31 or 32. Guys like Tony Gonzalez, when he was slowed down, still had the route running acumen, especially underneath, to be a high volume pass catcher. Rob Gronkowski, when he came back with Tampa during the times that he was healthy, he delivered at a high level. Antonio Gates, after his foot surgeries, came back and later in his career was strong like that. So I think Kittle fit Travis Kelce, So I think that when we look at players like Kittle, their skill with zones and reading defenses and ability to find the open spot is really high level stuff. And Kittle still looks as quick as he ever has. So the big question will be, does he fade down the stretch? But I don't think the way they'll use him will matter.
Right. Since 2018, he's been a top 5 fantasy tight end in 6 seasons where he played at least 14 games. That's the key, the health. I know one of the knocks is like, well, he's a really good blocker, so sometimes they keep him in. Well, sure, there are going to be games there. He's a little bit. He has a little bit of up and down, but the spike weeks you're not finding anywhere else. He had 7 games with 20-plus points last year, including a 30-point game when it mattered most in Week 17. I think he's the value play here of the top tier of tight ends. If you're missing out, you don't want to spend that second-round capital on Brock Bowers. And look, there's changes in Seattle, or in changes. Geno Smith comes from Seattle. There's changes there in Las Vegas that leave open questions. Trey McBride needs to show the positive touchdown regression. The workload's there. I'm not against drafting him, in the 3rd round where he's going, but I'd probably rather have a more George Kittle, more proven guy.
In a PPR league, he only had 3 games that you would consider bad. Week 18, Week 1, and then Week 13. And then the weeks where he had like 4 for 40 type of things, or 5 for 50, he had 1 or 2 touchdowns in most of those games. So when he scored touchdowns, it often padded bad yardage weeks.
I want to play a little running back roulette here with you, Matt Waldman. Feel it or fuck it. Which Cowboys running back? Is it Javonte Williams? Is it Miles Sanders? Is it Jaydon Blue? Is it Phil Maffa? Which of these guys offers the best draft day value based on price versus potential points? They're going in that order. Javonte Williams is going at what I think is a fairly reasonable price to me. Bring it up to the number right in front of me. I had it in front of me, and then I lost it in front of me. Javonte Williams is going as a running back. Wow. Running back 38 in the 10th round.
Okay.
Everyone else is going after that. Jaydon Blue is going a few rounds later. Miles Sanders and Maffa are probably irrelevant. They're both going. They're available as free square plays. Javonte Williams, a reasonably priced commodity as running back 38. Feeler fuck it.
I'm feeling it on paper, but I'd say fuck it with Jaydon Blue in the equation. Mainly because I think Jaydon Blue is a more promising runner. He's probably retained more of his athletic ability that Williams may not have retained. And it's not so much about the running back and where they're placed relative to other players right now. I think it's more about the Cowboys' offensive line. Cowboys have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and they're trying to rebuild. And maybe they're successful early on, and they turn it around fast. It can happen. I remember watching the Atlanta Falcons do that several years ago when they rebuilt their offensive line literally during a preseason in August before Devonta Freeman went off and had a huge year. But that's rare. That usually doesn't happen. So for me, I'd let other people take Williams as the lead back. And if I'm going to take my shot on a player, I'm going to go for the later drafted Blue, who's the best combination of ability, upside, and value at his round. Maffa's a free square, so if you want to see if you can back him up with that, I would do that. Only because I think that the Cowboys have shown that they're kind of a boom-bust type of team when it comes to what they acquire in personnel. And Williams hasn't really shown what he had shown earlier in his career. Sanders is just, Sanders, it may be a worse play. They almost paid Sanders as much as they paid Rico Dowdle in Carolina, which is just kind of hilarious because I think Dowdle's a better back. So, Sanders is a great athlete, but as long as Blue holds on to the ball, I have it projected right now that Javonte Williams is going to have about 178 attempts for 657 yards. That's about 3.7 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns, and maybe another 40 catches for 225 yards. He's going to lead the running backs in targets and catches. He's going to lead them in attempts. That's what my projections are. But I would say the player who's going to take a good bite into that backfield is going to be Blue. And I have Blue at 120 attempts for 517 yards for 4.3 yards, and then 35 targets and 25 catches. And I think his role is the one that's the most variable to grow as the summer goes along. And I could see him me changing my projections the most on Jaydon Blue.
I'm taking a lot of Blue right now at 141. That's round 13. Seems super reasonable. Or 12 to 13 turn with Williams, who I have shares of as well, going more around the 10, 11 turn. I think that's reasonable for both of them. A little bit of hope here. Ryan Schottenheimer is going to call a more balanced offense than we've seen, or at least that's going to be his goal. And he brought in Clayton Adams, his offensive coordinator, who will not be calling the plays, but will be working. He was former Cardinals offensive line coach. He will work closely with the offensive line. Cardinals rushing attack ranked 7th in the NFL last year. They were top 10 in rushing touchdowns, 5th most in carries at 20 to 30 yards, 40 yards, and tied for the first in NFL in carries of 40 yards or more. Jaydon Blue with that sub 4.4 speed. I like that, Matt. Will be a big part of that if it's going to happen. So I'm with you there. I think both those guys are great values, or at least values. If not great values. I'll just, I asked you one the other day because I had the choice to make. Feeler, fuck it. Jaydon Blue over Facial Tootin', or does it depend? Is it more nuanced than just feel it or fuck it? It may depend on how your roster's being built.
I think it depends on how your roster's being built. But if I were going to go for it right now, I go back and forth on it. Like I told you over the weekend, probably Blue, but now like today, I'm feeling Tootin'. It's like that close.
I've been splitting it almost 50-50, but those are guys I'm taking. I've started taking it. The choice usually comes down to them. You're getting them after into the double-digit rounds. It feels like, especially in best ball, which is what we're all playing right now, you're looking for kind of ambiguous backgrounds and backfields and hoping you come up with a guy who's going to end up getting more shares than we think. And I think both of them have that opportunity.
If we're going to go opportunities in the passing game, having higher value, I'm going to go Jaydon Blue because I think he's the better receiver. and I think he has more opportunities to become a better blocker. And how I put it this way, not more opportunities, but he has more upside to succeed as a blocker early on than Tootin does. Tootin strikes me as a physical talent who is still learning the nuances of the game, whereas Jaydon Blue's a physical talent who already shows some nuances of the game. It's just that his ball security is worse than Tootin's has been. But those are things that can be correctable, so we'll see if they can make that happen. And I also just think that the Cowboys may be in a position where Blue can get a little bit more in the passing game, whereas with Tootin, Travis Etienne is still a good pass catcher. He does that work pretty well out of the backfield. And their offensive line doesn't inspire any more confidence for me either.
They've bolstered a little bit in free agency. They're following the bulking up the middle of the offensive line and added there. I think if you're splitting hairs here, you know how I'm going to split them. 4-3-2 is faster than 4-3-8. I don't think it really matters all that much. So maybe I have one more share of Tootin because of that. But I think both guys are going to have some opportunities this year. CeeDee Lamb told us, I believe it was late yesterday, that both he and George Pickens are wide receiver ones. There is no 1A, 1B, 1 or 2. It's equal footing. I think I'll just say fuck that. I don't think it will be because CeeDee Lamb has been dynamite over the course of his time. Let's say Dak Prescott stays healthy. Could Lamb regain his wide receiver 1 overall status with Pickens now they're cutting into the targets a bit, or does he add to that and you like where he's at, or is even now his wide receiver 3 ADP too aggressive?
I still like his wide receiver 3 ADP. I have him right now at 1,500 yards and 11 touchdowns, which I think is a little lower than where I'd project him if the offensive line I was confident would be better. But I think that Prescott's going to have a little less time to throw, which means that you're going to see high target range. I think he's going to have 176 targets, 125 receptions, and 1,500 yards. That's pretty nice work in PPR. That's top 5 level value, and he's as safe as it comes because he plays all 3 positions at a high level. He's the number 1 target in this offense, and I know that what he said to George, but I think he knows.
George said the same thing, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Whatever, like the opposite person. Whether I'm 1B or 2, whatever, I'm fine with whatever I am, right? So they're both saying the right thing.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, CeeDee knows who he is, which is one of the best wide receivers in the league. And I don't think he needs to tell anybody how good he is. I think he wants this team to be good, and he knows the more that they can get George Pickens involved, probably the more confident he will be and the better that he'll play. And if you're going to, and I have Pickens expected at over 100 targets this year. Right. So if, they're both going to have over 100 targets, I have Pickens edging towards 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns, which is, a nice year for him. Clearly wide receiver 2 territory, but that's okay. There are going to be teams that play him like the wide receiver 1 in certain sets because they can't deny his speed on the outside. So that's where I think Lamb is technically coming from.
So Lamb, by the way, had he was wide receiver 1 going into last year because he is coming off a 23.8 point per game 2023, right? I mean, he was phenomenal. He fell to 17.6 points per game last season, but a lot of that was due to Prescott being hurt. I mean, in the games with Prescott playing, he was averaging 18.5 fantasy points. He was a wide receiver 4 during that time. Over the final 7 games without Prescott, Lamb averaged 16.5 points per game. So he dropped to wide receiver 11 before he missed the final 2 games and fell further. Meanwhile, Pickens gives them maybe the kind of outside receiver that makes a good complement to the more well-rounded Lamb, right? I mean, I think this is good for the offense and maybe good for both these guys. First, let's say this. Feel or fuck it. George Pickens now becomes the first wide receiver other than Lamb to get over 700 yards since 2021.
Oh, I feel that. Absolutely feel that. He's going to take over the Tolbert role because now he's the true X in this offense. Whereas Lamb could play the X, but you'd rather him bounce in and out from flanker and slot. That's where he's at his absolute best. And George Pickens kind of eliminates the need to move him around like that, and that you're going to get more out of Lamb as a result of that. But Pickens himself is still going to benefit from CeeDee Lamb, and he's going to benefit playing with Dak Prescott all year. So, I mean, for me, I have him at 61 catches, 915 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That breaks that right there. And I think that you still may get another 800 yards out of Cavante Turpin and Jalen Tolbert combined, and that doesn't even, I think Dak Prescott's going to rebound. I think he's going to give you about a 4,500 yard season and over 30 touchdowns if he had a good offensive line around him, because I've looked at what he's done with bad offensive lines. If he had a good offensive line, I think he'd be closer to 4,900 yards or a 5,000 yard season, but I don't think he's ever going to get there unless this line really ramps it up.
Dak Prescott's finished as quarterback 6 times in his career. Every year that he's played a full 16 or 70 game season, led the NFL with 36 touchdown passes, and finished as quarterback 3 as recently as 2023, right? So right now you're drafting him as quarterback 16, people. That is a quarterback 2 with tremendous upside, quarterback 1 upside, maybe a quarterback overall.
Just take Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott, and you're probably pretty good to go as your late round strategy.
I think that's true. One more Dallas Cowboy. Jake Ferguson was tight end 9 in 2023. Last year had the knee injuries. Ferguson had the 5th most targets among all tight ends and the 2nd most on the Cowboys during the 6 games that he and Prescott were on the field together. He's projected to finish as tight end 13, but he's being drafted as tight end 15. Is there another guy you're willing to invest in on the cheap with hopes of getting tight end 1 numbers?
I don't think there's another guy like him that I would say that, unless it's one of the rookies. But I think I have Ferguson really at, I have him at 94, the 3rd most targeted receiver on this team, 94, and then 65 catches, 4 more than Pickens, and 623 yards, because obviously he's not stretching the field like Pickens will be, and 5 touchdowns. And I think that I'm comfortable with that range. I mean, is it high-end tight end 1 value in fantasy? No. But is he a low-end TE 1? Absolutely, with those numbers.
The king lives, Matt. The king lives. The king is Derrick Henry. He lives for apparently 2 more years in the minds of the Ravens, who paid him, gave him a 2-year, $30 million extension. Maybe he only plays 1 more year, whatever it is. It's this year we're focused on. Does his age, he's 31 now, he'll be 32 before the end of the season. Does that age make him a risky play at running back 6? Or does the volume and the 2024 production and the production leading up to that make you feel like he's a safer investment than most aging running backs?
If he gets hurt, the perception will be that it's age, and nobody will be able to combat that against a mass of people with their opinion about that. But the fact of the matter is that he's shown over the years that he can handle a high workload, and he's performed at a good level. And if you base it on last year, he played behind probably one of the best offensive lines he's played behind, with the best quarterback he's ever worked with. And he's going to be in doing that again. So I see another 305 attempts, probably about 1,850 yards and 16 touchdowns, and one of the top 5 running backs in football once again, and I'll bet on it. I bet on it in Dynasty. I traded for him in 2 leagues last year, knowing that I would get at least another year out of him on a win-now team. Now I'm probably getting another 2.
Yeah, you know where I stand. I'm supporting all the older players for the obvious reasons, but also they're pretty damn good, and also for the main reason that Matt knows. If I bring up my centerfold, the next gen stats speed markers, he still had 2 of the top 20 speeds in the NFL. He's 247 pounds, people. He takes really good care of himself. He's pushing hard.
I know you like to mix up your repertoire from speed with an occasional side of size.
It's true.
So, yes.
Well, when I can put the 2 together, it's like,
yeah.
So look, I mean, he's been a monster, and it takes really good care of himself. Andy Hicks wrote, something in a Dynasty running back article on the site, and I think it is correct. Football guys, age is undefeated. There is no doubt about it. So at some point it's going to fall off, but I don't think you're taking an undue chance based on what we saw last year and in the years leading up to that. But mostly it's about the role, man. I'm drafting anticipated volume when I'm drafting that high. I want guys that are going to get sure carries. And if something happens, well, hopefully I figured out my depth and found guys like Jaydon Blue and Pearsall who are going to rise up out of the nowhere to deliver huge numbers as well.
And you can back up Henry with Justice Hill or Keaton Mitchell very late. And you may not get Henry-like numbers, but you'll get good enough value that you can keep your team afloat until you do find that option.
That has been my move in most of the drafts where I'm landing him. I'm getting Justice Hill at a really reasonable price, or if I miss out on Justice Hill, because he does have a little standalone touchdown value, Keaton Mitchell late as well. Devon Achane, running back 7 ADP. Is that justified, or are investors ignoring durability concerns? How do you feel about him? He's coming off a pretty solid year, pretty solid 2-year run for a third-round pick. Seems like he's taken over. I think that's a fair price. What do you say?
Oh, I agree. I mean, he played all 17 games last year, and certainly people remember how I think people got so excited about him because they were like, he's going to have a McCaffrey-esque year because he averaged 7.8 yards per carry in 2023. Now, again, that was only 11 games. It was only 100 rushes. It was still very impressive, but it was also with the way Miami played offense in a way that created the defenses to think and have to kind of figure out how they're going to play Miami in succeeding years. And I think they figured that out because, his average fell to 4.5, which is still very good, still very strong. But you saw also that his targets massively increased. He more than doubled pretty much everything that he did in the passing game. So you're looking at a player who showed that he can be a top 10 running back, and I wouldn't be too concerned about him. They're always going to limit his running between the tackles at 5'9" in the 180s, 190 range. He's not going to be Derrick Henry, who's going to close out games like that. But you are seeing an Austin Eckler type of player, and I think and Eckler's a little bit heavier, but you're seeing more in the reception arena. So as long as you're in a PPR format. And even if you're not, you're still getting nearly a 1,500-yard player, So, I mean, I think he's good to go in pretty much any format that you use.
Yeah, I think, some of the numbers over the course of his career have been super impressive. Rookie broke the 50-year-old record for yards per carry at 7.8. Got more of the workload last year. Ran behind an offensive line that was beat up. And struggled. The Dolphins have done a lot to address that this year. So I like him an awful lot. It's hard to, focus your attention on him. As he said, you got 10 and 17, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle out there, and the overlooked Jonnu Smith. We'll talk about Jonnu Smith here. I think it's crazy. But Jonnu Smith, let me just run this at you. Jonnu Smith finished last year's tight end 4. He's being drafted as tight end 17 on Underdog. What the hell?
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, I don't get it. We've seen that they want to use the tight end. They want to use a tight end who can run after the catch because the way the routes are used, the concepts that they employ in Miami, they really want their tight end to be able to run after the catch ability. They got a lot out of Mike Gesicki, who is not a run after the catch guy. So the fact that they're able to get what they got out of Jonnu Smith, I think that continues. And I just want to have a little addendum to the Derrick Henry discussion and say this. If Derrick Henry gets hurt, and you've already drafted him high, don't be surprised if the Baltimore Ravens end up signing either Nick Chubb or J.K. Dobbins again for that role, or both, because they've been prone to signing running back veterans and getting some value out of them, even though the value may not look great because the offensive line was banged up too. But one of those two backs, could you imagine, Nick Chubb hasn't been signed. He's probably not going to be signed until the season starts or camp. Or same with Dobbins. The Ravens know Dobbins knows the team well, knows a lot of the personnel, may not know the offense, but either of those guys will probably give you running back 2 value.
Yeah, and by the way, Dobbins, the Chargers put the unusual unrestricted tag or unrestricted tender on him. That means that if you sign him before training camp, you have to give up some compensatory picks and such like to the Chargers. So he may be waiting as well, like you said. I think that makes perfect sense. By the way, so Ollie Gordon at running back there, what is he?
He's one of those.
That's in Miami, people. I'm sorry.
He's one of those cheap centerfold plays for Bob Harris, probably, which is like, look, he's big, he's fast, he's strong. Yes. And in Miami's offense, where they basically say, here's the hole, hit it, Gordon has a future. And I think that he can be a viable player. Do I think that he's going to be an absolute superstar? I don't think so. I think he'll have one. He's one of those guys that if an injury happens, he's going to have one huge year, and people are going to look at him like they looked at Eli Mitchell. And then we're going to have to see whether he can grow into that role and become a more nuanced player. But he is definitely worth having at the back end of rosters that are in deeper leagues. Definitely the back end of rosters in dynasty leagues because of the fit. But the thing is he's going to have to grow with it, because if he doesn't grow with it, then like Tevin Coleman, like Elijah Mitchell, he's going to bounce around the league as a reserve who might give you some hope, but he's not going to be that every year plug it in top 15, top 20 guy.
Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
A dose of reality. Slap. Fuck that, Bob Harris. Tua Tagovailoa going as quarterback 22. What are we doing here, Matt? Feel that or fuck it?
I'd say I'm feeling that I can take him at QB 22. I mean, I think that's just. I guess people are feeling the idea that this offense is just going to fall apart. I mean, that's what everybody's predicting. It's right. Funny to me that they look at the running game and they're like, oh, yeah, Devon Achane's going to be running back 7, but the rest of this offense is going to fall apart. You know, there's a little bit of there is kind of some cognitive dissonance here going on with this whole thing. I think that Tagovailoa is probably a guy that should be valued more like as QB 15 to 17 at the very worst, in that same range as Prescott and Purdy. But I guess the injury tag, Tyreek Hill's instability in the offseason, Jalen Waddle having some weird drop issues at certain times and plays that they wish that he could have made, that the flukish nature from people's perspective apparently of their tight end Jonnu Smith all probably play into this kind of undervaluing of the Miami offense. I guess they feel like the witch is dead there.
I think that is 100% true, and I think there is value to be had. People, I like things that are cheap, so feeling it all day long.
Ollie Gordon's cheap.
Ollie Gordon is more.
He's a cheap thrill. He's a cheap
free.
Thrill. Yeah,
he's free. That's my favorite price of all.
There you go.
But even at that, I gotta say, I don't have. That's why I'm asking. I don't have any. Yeah. I'm thinking, should I get some?
According to Matt, he could be good. I mean, it's worth that late. It's worth doing because you could probably sell high on him. Yeah,
right. Free square plays are what we like around here. We also like the rookie scouting portfolio. You can get that at mattwaldman.com. You can also get all of our work at Football Guys. You can write nice letters and tell us how the RSP compares to your LSD experiences. We'd appreciate that. Otherwise, we'll be back week for another episode of Feel It or Fuck It. And I'll remember to ask whether to feel it or fuck it way more times than I did this week. Damn it.
Love you, Bob.
Love you, bye.